Now it's time for Paul Harvey's News and Comment, and it's brought to you this hour by Terminex.
Hello, Americans. This is Paul Harvey. Stand by for news. If you will excuse me, a couple of days later this week, I sure would like to go fishing up in Ontario, Canada, where you can scoop sparkling, clear drinking water from alongside the boat. But the Aladdin Stanley steel thermos will be going along for hot coffee. You know, a man carries that Aladdin Stanley thermos with such pride, he'll seldom buy one for himself. They're that expensive. Mine was a gift. I guess it's the only gift I ever got guaranteed for a lifetime. The Stanley's made in the United States, you know, to standards that no other thermos can match. For the workplace, the Stanley is the indestructible one, or for the fishing or hunting trip or the football game, traveling in the car. The Aladdin Stanley steel thermos now comes in a wide mouth size also. Have you seen that wide mouth Stanley? Now you can eat your beef stew with a spoon from a wide mouth Stanley. Not every store has the wide mouth in stock, but if you insist that you want one, your store owner can get one. The Stanley steel thermos for the times of your life for as long as you live. The housing industry is looking up. Both housing starts and future permits have been hurting from higher mortgage interest rates, but housing starts improved a fraction last month. After 4 months going backward, more homes were started in July than in June. Our nation's factories and mines and utilities were operating in July at 80.5% of capacity. That's the highest rate in 18 months, 1.3% more than a year ago. Our nation's deficit this fiscal year will be less than last year, about $159 billion. That's a rather dramatic decrease from last year's $221 billion. However, the projection for next year is higher again, and higher again the year after that, unless Congress reduces spending, or by a constitutional amendment is required to. American journalist Charles Glass in Lebanon, kidnapped 2 months ago, has escaped from his kidnappers. He climbed out a window while his captors slept. He is entirely well and safe. This leaves 24 foreigners still held in Lebanon, 8 of them Americans. On the medical front, leg cramps are not necessarily a sign of old age. They can afflict people in their 20s. Cramps which occur when you walk and vanish when you rest can be a warning sign of a peripheral arterial disease. It is a form of hardened arteries. It can become very serious. But caught early, it may be treated with nothing more drastic than a simple change of diet, reducing sugar and fats in the diet. Dr. Anthony DeFeo is a vascular disease specialist at Boston University. He says smokers are twice as likely to develop the disease. There is an FDA drug which sometimes helps, a drug called Trental. The National Council on Aging is conducting free screening programs in 10 cities this summer so that victims of leg cramps can seek treatment while it is still effective. Caught early, 75% of victims will not require drastic treatment. Did you hear what happened in Yellowstone Park? The sign alongside Old Faithful Geyser warns visitors to stay back, but Tom Sanders of Chicago did not. He was up close when the geyser belched. He suffered second-degree burns from the steam. Water comes out of there at 204 degrees. Charles Merrill Mount is accused of stealing rare Civil War documents from the National Archives and from the Library of Congress in Boston. 161 documents, including letters signed by Lincoln. Now the FBI has opened and searched a safe deposit box, which Charles Mount had rented, and more documents, another 191 documents. 22 of these signed by Lincoln. Doc Blakely writes, telling about the neighbor high school girl who spent the summer on an archaeological expedition. She spent the summer on an archaeological digging in a trash dump in Ecuador. The summer cost her parents $6,000. Doc says it would have been less, but she insisted on flying to and from first class. Now, page 2. The other day, I saw a demonstration. I saw this thing work. This new generation of lightweight vacuum cleaners made by the Hoover Company. They're called the Quick Broom 2. Quick Broom, Roman numeral 2 cleaners. Now, the first thing struck me is how sleek and streamlined they are. They're not quite as skinny as a broom handle, but very slender, remarkably light in weight, and yet the new Quick Broom cleaner is packed with power. The top-of-the-line model has a 4.5 amp motor, making it the most powerful lightweight vac that Hoover has ever made. And another feature I really like, a see-through cup collects the dirt. Because it's transparent, you can see when it's full. And to empty it, you just snap it off, shake it out, reattach it, that quickly. Hoover Quick Broom 2 Cleaners. A new look, more powerful, and more convenience, and yet they're still modestly priced. I want you to visit any Hoover dealer and see how Hoover just keeps making things better for you. Why didn't Ollie North trust Congress? Well, let's see. Some members of Congress have been raising money for the wrong side in both El Salvador and Nicaragua. Senators and representatives who have signed fundraising letters or whose names appear on the letters as sponsors include Senator Tom Harkin, Representatives John Conyers, George Brown, Ron Dellums, Julian Dixon, Melvin Damali, Thomas Foglietta, Robert Garcia, Mickey Leland, Perrin Mitchell, Pete Stark, Bruce Vento, Pat Schroeder. Some groups opposed to United States policy held a mobilization day. That event was so openly dominated by communists that the AFL-CIO advised its members not to participate. But those who did participate included congressmen David Bonnier, Ted Weiss, Walter Fauntroy, John Conyers. Why didn't Ollie North trust Congress? Congressman George Crockett of Michigan refused to vote with the rest of Congress to condemn the Soviets for shooting down a civilian passenger plane. He voted against a resolution condemning the Soviets for the murder of an American Army officer in East Germany. And yet this same Congressman Crockett has been selected by the leadership of the House, Jim Wright et al., has been selected as chairman of the Subcommittee on Central America, where he'll be dealing with our interests in Nicaragua. By the way, the same Congressman Crockett in the 1940s and 50s sponsored receptions for convicted spies, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, and he was a top dog in the infamous National Lawyers Guild. Why didn't Ollie North trust Congress? When California's Congressman Ron Dellums was sent to investigate Grenada Airport, he offered to allow Marxists to review his report and suggest changes before he submitted it to Congress. And he gave the Grenada Marxists a clean bill of health. Dellums, a hardline leftist, sits on the House Armed Services Committee and on the Subcommittee on Investigations and on the Subcommittee on Military Installations and Facilities. Why didn't Ollie North trust Congress? Much has been said of the Boland Amendment, intended to limit the prerogatives of the President. Congressman Edward Boland insists that he wants government to be frank and open with the people. Yet his own staff in 1982 doctored a House Intelligence Committee report on a Soviet organization, thus to exclude any mention of the participation of 6 House Democrats who had been named in FBI testimony: Rangel and Dellums, Conyers, Damali, Leland, and Edwards. Our State Department says that the National Council of American-Soviet Friendship is funded by the Soviet Union. Senator Paul Simon has endorsed an initiative of that organization, and now he wants to be president of the United States. Why didn't Ollie North trust Congress? Question answers itself. Page 3.
Terminix, Termite and Pest Control.
Yeah, we're going on a picnic, and I haven't seen my Terminix man all morning.
Picnic?
Well, when he got rid of my roaches and spiders, he told me Terminix was here to stay, and you know, picnics and ants.
Oh, ma'am, your Terminix protection is what stays with you.
Right,
but you didn't think your Terminix man,
well, listen,
actually.
He's picking up the watermelon and the ice for the picnic, and he promised about the ants.
Oh, ma'am, you think because your Terminix man said...
Well, here you are. Where's the ice?
Shop talk in the television ratings race. ABC's World News Tonight edged into first place last week, and that's the first time it's won in a non-event week in 5.5 years. Time editor Henry Grunwald resigning probably to become our ambassador to Austria. Anybody involved in private aviation, your best friend is about to receive significant recognition. Paul Poberezny, founder and president of the Experimental Aircraft Association, host of the world's biggest fly-in each year in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Paul Poberezny, he'll be recognized by the National Aeronautic Association as aviation's elder statesman. Washington, D.C., October 27. I have to tell you something before the baseball season runs out. Now, I'm not going to mention certain names because professional people are involved, but at a certain hospital, in a certain city, baseball umpire Frank Pulley elected to have a stress test. He arrived late. The umpire arrived late for his morning appointment. He had to officiate at an afternoon baseball game. The umpire's tidy arrival snafu'd hospital schedules, but the doctors and staff tried to work him in. They tried to juggle things to accommodate him. But Frank Pulley was kept waiting for a while, for quite a while. And as I say, he did have an afternoon game to umpire. Well, they had all of the electrodes strapped onto his chest, but he had to wait his turn until a treadmill and a doctor were available. He began to fuss and fret, and loudly. Rotund Frank Pulley, as any ball player or fan knows, can get loud. At the climax of his indignation, Pulley shouted at the doctor he considered responsible for the delay. He shouted, "Who do you think you are, God?" And with that, Pulley ripped the electrodes from his chest, dressed hastily, and stalked out of the place. Well, so much for his morning at the hospital, which, as I say, reached a crescendo with his loud shout. The umpire, on the way out, shouted over his shoulder, "Who do you think you are, God?" Now, it may be Frank Pulley was still upset when he got to Wrigley Field. It may be that Frank is always upset. But anyway, Pulley, as plate umpire, got into a shouting match that afternoon with Mets first baseman Keith Hernandez. It grew increasingly heated until umpire Pulley ejected Hernandez from the game. Now, mind you, Hernandez knew nothing about what I've just told you concerning the happenings of the morning. And yet, leaving the game, Hernandez angrily shouted at umpire Pulley. Back over his shoulder, he shouted at the umpire, "Who do you think you are, God?" Hey, there's a used car for sale in Lake George, New York, a cranberry red 1933 Duesenberg, owned by Greta Garbo. It could bring $2 million. Millie Morgenstern of Pinckneyville, Illinois now, she has a Ford Coupe. Her father bought for her in 1931, and she's still driving it to church on Sundays and to stores on Tuesdays. You can't buy that at any price. Page 4. Did you see the headline? Interstate's Megatron MT-34 tested #1 in America. Hey, that's us. Independent testers lined up the 15 major automobile batteries, all of the names you know, tested side by side, and the overall highest rating went to our Interstate in cold cranking power, in warm cranking power, in reserve capacity. This was a grueling testing. Finally, quality control. That means that any interstate battery must live up to the specs of all interstate batteries. And nobody else even came close. And this Interstate Megatron comes in a size for your boat or your RV or your farm machinery. And on each interstate battery, there's that phone number, puts you in touch immediately with any of 140,000 interstate battery dealers. You can be ever so far from home and still be among friends with an interstate battery in your car. And besides all that, it's the best battery there is. Sugar production in the United States way up. Americans produced 2.4 million tons of sugar January through June. Can you tell me why we're still importing sugar? Why we imported almost 1 million tons January through June? I don't know. Our For What It's Worth department has found something new in beepers. You know, the beeper that the doctor carries in his pocket to alert him to any emergency. Well, others are carrying those beepers now. Chauffeurs so that they can be summoned, even lawyers and accountants so they can be signaled to telephone their offices. There are some 20 million of these paging devices attached to people's belts or in briefcases or in pockets or hanging around necks. The newest one is the false beeper. The false beeper. This one you carry in your pocket and you activate it yourself. Anytime you want, you can make the thing beep. As when you say you want to get out of a boring meeting. Whoops, sorry, I have to run now. Paul Harvey. Good day.
This is Scott Miller. Join Paul Harvey at 5:45 this afternoon and you'll know the rest of the story. Paul Harvey exclusively on WLVK, Statesville, Charlotte, K97 FM.
From K97 FM's Advanced Radar Weather Center, here's the Charlotte area forecast. Not such a bad day, huh? Bit of afternoon clouds, but I don't think it's any worse than partly cloudy. Temperature 92. Over this evening will be a chance of a thunder shower. The low overnight will be 71. Tomorrow, variable cloudiness and 90, a few showers and thunder showers again later in the day. I'm meteorologist Bonnie Cameron on K97 FM.
At 101, the skies remain sunny and it's 89 degrees.
Continuous hit country. K97 FM now presents the most country music in the Carolinas.